Hi everyone, so thanks for being here at Software Craftsman in Luxembourg. We are happy to have Nicolas here this evening with us. Nicolas, Carlo, I will let you introduce yourself, but quick word about how we met. We met at Legacy of Socrates, that you are the organizer of this software conference. You are also author of the book Legacy Code and the first aid kit. And your talk today is it's about that techniques to tame legacy code. When we first met, and we have read your book, we have seen your conference, and we were happy to discuss with you. And we thought it would be good to add yes, to make something like in the good old days where we were physically all together in the meetups, and to add more interactivity in this talk. Still, we will not have beers at the end, but the idea is to have a chat. So in this workshop, we will have also a breakout session where we can exchange and discuss. So maybe before we start, you can introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Adrien. Thank you, Johan, for having me. So, hey, everyone. My name is Nicolas, indeed. I'm working and living in Montreal, Canada. So it's actually almost noon for me, but I used to be in France, in Paris, so the same time zone. Yeah, a bit about me. Well, I work as a tech lead at a company named Busbud. Most of my time is spent actually coding and contributing, and also some of my time is spent on the thinking about the architecture, managing the team, and it's a startup, so I'm involved in many places. I like that. And before that, I was a consultant, and before that, I did a lot of web development, basically front end, back end, or whatever. But what's hit me the most was that in any mission I was involved into, at the moment I came and I worked with the team managing an existing software shipped into production and serving customers. It was all about working with existing code that was fully documented, badly tested. Often the people who wrote the code were gone, so that's the case at Busbud, for example. So over the years, I really get interested into this, how to work with the existing code, because people told you about the tools, the new languages, the frameworks, the algorithm, the design pattern, etc. But you have actually very few resources well known about how do you manage this existing stuff that you are inheriting and you need to deal with. You need to change it every day, and you need to not break it. So yeah, that's how I get into that. So that's why I started blogging about this on the understandlegacycode.com in January 2020, so last year, to share more broadly, not just inside Busbud, but to share that publicly. And after blogging a lot, I finally I had a catalog of techniques that worked best for myself. So I put that into a book, like a nice format, so I could share that. And I also prepared a talk, which is the one I'm going to give. But I'm really interested about two things. First, it's going to be interactive. So we're going to have a discussion about how you are doing this too. I'm curious. And then I will share with you some of the techniques I use, for example, and we will have another interactive session where I would like to know, all some of the techniques I presented you may be already using or not, or what do you think? So I really like this format of the meetup to be interactive. So
well, thanks for accepting the invitation, and yes, also excited to see to get interaction and to get inputs also from the participants. Maybe so now the idea is that we'll do, I will ask you a question that you see in the screen. We'll take 5 to 10 minutes per groups. In each groups, you will first, please check that your mic is on when you are in your group, because by default you have the mic off. So unmute your microphone. You'll exchange with your group what are your own secret techniques to tame legacy code. What do you do at the moment? Things you have learned in the past, things that were working and such. So this is the first question. Afterwards, we will have a smaller roundtable. One person per group will share what was discussed. After what we will do your talk, and we will do another round session to see, as you said, okay, from what you present, what can be done in their own people from their own context and so on. We'll check that later. So for now, what are your own secret techniques to tame a legacy code? Johan, when you are ready to create the groups, tell me.
Yep, we can do when you want. Yeah.
Eh ben, go.
Okay, so you will be assigned automatically. Okay, so you have 10 minutes to answer this question.
Ouais.
Il le fait bien. Hein?
Ouais, on s'y croit, en tout cas.
We are back from the small little room.
Yeah, we should all be back.
I think we are all.
Okay.
17 people here.
Shivam, Alexandro. Yeah, we are four. We were four in one room.
Okay, so who wants to start? Share what was discussed in this group? So just
I can try to shortlist the main points that we mentioned.
Yes.
And they are the following one. Usually when we work with legacy code, we assume the following, that there are no automated tests, or the list is small, or they are not working simply. So first thing will be to create tests, either unit tests, either contract-based tests, meaning testing the public APIs like controllers and stuff like that, JMS endpoints, etc. This will help us to identify the external dependencies, like databases, emails, FTP, file system, and so on. And this one, the end, either we decide to stick with the existing dependency and hook it up to the project, or mock it, or find another solution. Another way will be to check the Git log and try to identify the hotspots, meaning the most of the time changed files, or the, like we saw in the code scene tool by Adam Thornhill. And so yeah, that one. Other idea was to split, to try to split the code from technical layers, because this is most of the times used in legacy apps, meaning controllers, services, entities, and so on, to split them into feature-based or functional-based packages. And as a result, the feature-based or functional-based packages, they will become at some moment either modules, completely externalized, either applications as well, completely externalized. And another point was, if in case we have a legacy app that works and we have to add new features, what we can do is try to the possibility to get the request in the legacy app, but forward them to another application that will be running and developed next to the legacy app. So legacy app will become basically a proxy for a proxy. The functionality itself will be running in another sidecar app.
So you went pretty into the details now already. In this
I try to be short as possible.
Okay, cool. So I would be happy to see from any other group. Also, if someone has, I think it's easy to get in this conclusion that legacy is something that is not tested, or at least not automatic tested. And then you had a plan how to identify the hotspots and how to split, and you had already some kind of a plan. That's good. Can someone else maybe add other things that were not discussed in this group, or maybe do you have another way to describe or to, for you, if legacy code, it's maybe there are others way to tackle the legacy code. What is the legacy code for you, maybe?
Just one remark. I know there are some tools to create some dashboard and to give you some hotspots, but I don't remember the name of the tools. Johan, could you help me? It's a code. You present us these tools.
Yes, it's Codecine, but
yes.
Yeah, there was another stuff. Code forensics. It was a free stuff as well, based on Node.js, I think. Maybe it's the one as well you think about. But yes, Codecine.
So your code as a crime scene. So from the other participant, Florian, you have something to share?
I think I was lucky enough not to have too much to do with legacy code. Problems that I might have at this moment was an inability to test. Old code is often test unfriendly, and sometimes with a lot of mixed responsibilities. So it may be difficult to say this part is user interaction, or is infrastructure, or is pure business. Often business is mixed with other type of codes.
Yes, I can exactly see. You said at first that you don't have so much legacy code to work with, but you seems to already have a clear idea what is the legacy code. But yeah, I see. Thanks.
What I wonder also is at which moment code becomes legacy. I mean, you're working on your code, so it's hot code, if I say so. But what would you consider legacy? Is it all code in sense is it's been done some time before, or is it about quality? Your current code will become will it become legacy code for someone else? And maybe there are things you can do now to make it easier for others to take over.
There are mixed opinions. So you can see code, legacy code, as if we speak about the test, all the code that is not tested is legacy. You can say that. You can say that you are writing legacy code and technical debt all time. But so it depends on your I mean, everyone can have his own feeling about that, but I think most of the people are looking at the legacy code in terms of how tested this code base is, and you have a feeling that it's legacy also when you work on a project, and you know it's that kind of project that no one wants to touch. Like people often say, okay, don't touch, it's working like this for years. So they are afraid to add existing stuff, afraid to change. And often people prefer to write like something on top of instead of changing the code. So usually when you are in front of a legacy code, you know it.
But let's keep maybe this question for the end, because the time is running, and we still have maybe 2 groups, and Nicolas has like something like 30 minutes for his speech, so we can maybe go back to this question at the end, because I think you have a definition as well, Nicolas, in your presentation.
Yes, I will also try to make it a bit shorter. Don't worry. I've heard good stuff already from the audience, so I realized that people already know a few stuff, so that's going to be interesting.
Okay, cool. Maybe we can have at least 1 or 2 more people. Paul, you have something to share from your group?
Sure. I think what I noticed at the end, we came to a conclusion. It's a lot about knowledge and knowledge sharing, and I think it comes back to your point you were making. Nobody wants to touch it because nobody knows how to deal with it. So a lot of the knowledge is gone. There was also a talk about the Mikado technique, which I personally don't know yet. And also about dependencies, which could be like social, so between people working within a team, and then you talking to clients, users, developers, but also the technical dependencies, which is more related to the coupling and an isolation of functionality or not, or the lack of, therefore.
Great, thanks. So as we are running short on time, maybe if someone wants to add something, feel free. Otherwise, maybe Carlo, Nicolas, you can.
Yeah, I will.
You can start.
No worries, I will.
We'll take the time, and after you talk, we'll do again.
Don't worry.
So floor is yours.
Okay. If you have any question, you can drop in the chat. I will also keep an eye on this. And now I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, I'm not sure where I should. Where can I share my screen? I don't have a button to share it. Wait.
Is it okay now? You should have it now.
No, maybe I need to reload.
No. Let me check something.
Just a question. You are using macOS? Because I wonder if in macOS there is this security thing that will prevent you from having the button. No?
I do. Yeah, I do. I'm gonna double check this. I didn't get a prompt to ask me that, but
and shots when someone is sharing. Yeah. Normally you should have the button now. Does anyone have the button?
I do have the button, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
even I also have the button.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't. I'm gonna reconnect. Just maybe it's. Okay, coming back in a minute.
Yep.
Okay, maybe we can get another feedback. From who wants to give feedback? Martin, maybe?
So Sorry, I wasn't there at the beginning of the presentation,
Okay.
so I missed the first 20 minutes.
Okay, no problem.
But I can say that for the answer of what is legacy, I think the key part is fear of the code.
Yeah. The fear, yes. No one wants to touch.
Yep.
Everyone's afraid. I think we are pretty much aligned on that, yes. Nicolas, you are back. Is it working?
Yeah, I'm back. I don't see the button, so I'm looking in my Zoom config to see if there's something. But you're right, it's probably something about the security of macOS or something like that. So I'm looking at this.
Otherwise, you can maybe
share,
change the...
share screen. Yeah. Okay. We should have tested that before. Sorry for this. Okay, I don't know where I should.
20 minutes speaking about how is it important to make tests and
exactly. Now I'm Googling my way out of this.
Just an idea like that, or you can paste images onto the Miro board. That might be a fallback option.
Yeah, at worst case, yeah, we can do it like this. Yeah.
Someone else can share his screen and you can then talk through that.
Otherwise, why no, it's not.
If it's a Google slide or something like this, it would be easier. It would be easy for me to share it and to pass for you the screen.
It is not, but I think I have a PDF fallback I can share if you can share your screen.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm gonna find this. Just a second.
In the meantime, I have copy paste a quote from Adam Thornhill regarding what is technical debt. I really love this definition of technical debt because there is this notion of time that comes into play.
So here, and plus I'm gonna put that for everyone here as the slides.
Yep.
And if you can share them on screen, and I will use that to illustrate, because no, I can't share the screen, so I will figure this out later. All right, perfect. So yeah, you can move on the slides.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why. What? I just wanted to add the full screen version, but okay, it's really weird.
I think that's fine. Plus, can you go to the next slide? Maybe if you click on the button next to the Zoom on the right.
This one? No. This one.
This one. Is it that you were looking for?
Yeah, I was looking for but it's okay. Let's do it like this.
Okay, so no worries. Legacy code. I do have a definition because you have many definitions in the wild. The most popular one is the one from Michael Feathers, which is legacy code is code without test, and it's a good definition. It's not the one I prefer. It's a very pragmatic definition, especially in a time where, like, when you don't have tests, it's a good definition to start with this. But I've seen code bases that are tested and still we would consider that legacy code. My definition of legacy code for this talk is legacy code is profitable code you are afraid to change. So anything that matches these two criteria can be considered legacy code. Profitable code because, well, if you can throw away the code or it's not in production, it doesn't really matter. You can easily rewrite that. So we're talking about code that is in production, serving clients. You cannot just rewrite it like this. And you are afraid to change. I like this because there is a part of this which is subjective. When you're not familiar with the new code base and you're afraid to change it, you might consider this as part of legacy code. So to the question before, can you write legacy code to someone else? Definitely yes, and you will need to adapt when the team joins. So you have it's a lot about the working together on a code base, and do we understand what we are doing and what this code is doing so we can change it. So let's see on the next slide. Yeah, well, actually these were animations, but you can move forward. This is like a screenshot of you in your legacy code base. The main problems I want to address here are the fact that documentation is outdated and generally missing. Tests are either missing or the part you want to change at least is not covered by test. So if you break something, it won't tell you. And most of all, you have short deadlines because you cannot just stop and clean up everything. You have to ship features. So there is also this whole relation with, you know, management, the project, the customers, etc., and this technical aspect of the managing the code. So balancing with all of this can be very, very difficult. I've heard a story about people who work on worse legacy code base than I've personally seen, with a lot of magic, with a lot of clients, and burning out everyone working on that code base. So here I would like to share a couple of tips and tricks that worked for me. I already did present it myself, so we can move on. Okay, so I got 7 here. I have more, but I selected this one because they are very diverse. So my goal is that at least you will discover one of them, even if you know a bunch, you will discover one of them, and maybe you would like to try that at work. The first technique I want to talk about is the ADRs. So ADR stands for Architecture Decision Records. It is a nice kind of documentation if you think about it. Usually the problem with documentation is it gets out of date. It is hard to keep in sync the docs and the code. And usually the docs get outdated and the code is what the system really does. But this is special. This is not for documenting how the system is working. This is for capturing context at a specific moment when you take a decision on something. So later, like in 6 months or in 2 years, and maybe it's not you, maybe someone else, will be able to have clues about why the thing is working like that today. That means the more you add, the better. Sorry, so I think someone needs to be muted. All right. So the more you add, the better. You cannot be wrong. Also, what you're doing here is explaining why you're taking a decision, and it's fine if you don't have all the context and all the knowledge. You're deciding something, so you're trying to put inside the code base why you're doing this without cluttering the code. So this is what you do with ADRs. Let's see an example. Yeah, let's scroll down. Okay, this is an example from the codebase I'm working on today. We're doing this. It was written last year by a developer who is gone today. And at that time, we decided that we will not stop reading from the main database. We have the main database, we have follower databases, and we're reading from the main database by default. So we decided to stop that. So you have the title, you have the date. Important, you have the context. So here you describe everything you know, everything that exists today that pushes you to take that decision. That can be, well, in this case, we had some issues with locks and stuff that was true at the time. Maybe it's also because this is the only thing we know how to do today, or the team is familiar with this today, or this is what exists today. So everything that would justify your taking this decision, basically. Then you have the decision, which is the title with a little bit more details. And finally, the consequences, which is also an important part. You're taking a decision probably to achieve something, to do something. So you have pros. You may have other side effects. Maybe by taking this decision, you also have other benefits. You could list them here. Or maybe you are doing a trade-off. Maybe taking that decision will make it more difficult to do something else. Like in this case, it was, well, now if you want to read from the main database, you need to do that explicitly in the code. So if you ever wonder why we decided to do that and why do we need to explicitly read from main. When you will be looking in the code, searching for a comment or anything, you will find this file eventually. So you have a higher chance to understand why some decisions were taken a long time after they were taken. And in the project I'm working on since a year and a half, we're writing these from time to time, and these were very helpful 2 times. So twice it happens that we were very happy that someone wrote an ADR in the past because we were able to find why something was working that way, and that avoided us taking a wrong decision then, and you know, just changing something and it was a mistake. So ADR was helpful. Can you go to the next slide, please? So there is a CLI, it's super easy. Like basically it's a markdown file. So it's very simple. There is not much boilerplate, and there is a CLI tool you can use that creates a boilerplate for you. So you just really have to say ADR new and the title, and then you fill in the blanks. I find it's very nice for PR. So if you are doing pull requests to work with your team and doing car reviews, etc., I guess that at some point you do a PR description or something like that. So I feel that when I do an ADR, I can basically copy paste most of it in the PR description. The key is to keep it simple. It's fine if you don't put everything. It's fine if it's not perfect. You will improve your game as you go and find what you need to put and what you don't need to put in an ADR. The more you add, the better. Now, what should you document in an ADR? So not every single small decision that you take on the code, everything that can be done in the code, for example, I don't know, you are looping over a list. Well, you don't need to write an ADR for this. Typically in an ADR, you will put everything that is about the something that cannot be captured in a single file of code. It's more about the decision and how the system is working in general, how you decide the conventions you're designing, the architecture, maybe the organization of the files, maybe like yeah, everything that is meta about the code. And you can see that when you discuss with your team, when someone asks a question or doing a code review, maybe this is not clear from reading the code. So maybe you can have that in the code or in an ADR. That could be your hints. So that was it for ADRs. We're gonna move through the brain dump fast. So next slide. I wanted to bring up that that's a fact. Actually, your brain is limited in terms of memory. You cannot remember so many things. That's what we have computer for. Computer can store a lot of things. Your brain cannot. Your brain is very good at making connections. But if I give you my phone number, I won't give you every single digit. I will probably give you chunks because 3 or 5 chunks, you will be more likely to remember it than if I give you 10 digits individually without any connection. So the idea is that when you're working on the legacy code base, you have many distractions, and you probably want to do something. Like you open the code because you want to achieve something, but you will see many stuff in the middle that will distract you, and stuff you want to clean up, stuff you want to do, other things you need to do before. And if you don't do anything about that, your brain will get cluttered, and it will be difficult to work on the code base. It will make your life more difficult. So the idea will be to use something that I joke and call the PNP protocol, but if you can go to the next slide, I'm giving the advice to people to start having a pen and paper next to them. And it's not just about taking notes. So PNP stands for pen and paper. So that sounds like common sense and doesn't seem like an interesting advice to give. You probably do take notes already, but I like to think about that like meditation. I mean, it's common sense that it's a good thing and anyone can meditate in general, just like anyone can take notes. But can you do it? Like, can you do it properly? It takes practice to do it correctly. And it's the same thing for notes. So Next slide. Yeah, so the idea is that when you got this pen and paper on your side, you don't just draw whatever you're thinking right now. What I'm saying is you want to do one thing. So write that down. So it's clear, it's explicit. You clarify your mind about what you're doing. What is your objective? You make that clear. And you try to do that. And you will think about other stuff. So that's when you need to be aware of what you are thinking, of the distractions. So I tell you, it's pretty much like meditation. You need to be aware of being distracted. It's fine to be distracted. You can see a lot of things, but instead of acting on it, or instead of just thinking about that, you take your pen and you write it down as maybe like a to-do. You can consider this like a to-do. The difference is you may not do it later because you will have a long list of to-do, and it's not important that you tackle all of them. What is important is you write it down, so you stop thinking about it. You know that it's here, that if you, at the end of your work session, you can go back to your list and see what you have learned, what you have noted, and maybe some of the things you don't really need to do, but that helps you stay focused on the one thing that you're doing at the moment. So use a pen and a paper when you're working on the code base and you feel that you're not making any progress, so you can stay focused on your one goal and you write down anything that comes through, and so you don't think about it anymore. You get that out of your mind. That's the brain dump. Then overcommitting. So yeah, let's move on. Overcommitting. So the gist of it is to commit more often. So I don't know how often you commit, but smaller, more frequent commits make it easier to revisit the work you have done, to try things and go back. But also I find to be in a safe state, like everything is compiling. I don't like when you get into a broken state, like you have starting to do a change, and you cannot just ship that to production because that won't work. Like, how long do you stay in a broken state in legacy code? And that usually that is long. So overcommitting is a technique to have you commit more often and avoid that. It's not everything, but it helps. What I really like to use is this. So the idea is that you want to do more frequent commits. Like every 5 minutes. You don't want to commit every 5 minutes because that may be silly. Maybe you have nothing to commit, or maybe you are just in the middle of doing something. So you don't want to necessarily commit every 5 minutes, but you want to think about it. And just like before, as you are focused on doing something, you cannot always think about, I'm looking at the watch and every 5 minutes I need to think about committing. That is distracting. So this is a little gym timer you can find in a sport shop or online. It's quite cheap. It buzzes at a defined interval. So every 5 minutes, for example, it will buzz in my pocket. And that's not a distraction, actually. It's more of a nice reminder of, hey, maybe you should commit at this point. And maybe I won't, but maybe I will. And I practiced that like for an hour, for example. I set an hour buzz every 5 minutes. And after some time, I realized it becomes an habit. You don't have to think about it so much. And here was an example of commit streak I did a few months ago, and I didn't realize it. It's just afterwards, when I look at my commits now, they are much smaller and much more atomic. And this has a benefit on the next slide. The main benefit is that for your coworkers, for example, it's much more easier to review. So someday I got a PR that was a little bit too big to my taste, and I apologize, but my coworker, she told me that actually she's reviewing my PRs commit by commit because it's so much easier to follow what I did like atomically. And at the end of the day, she looks at the final diff, but when she wants to understand what I did and how I get there, she follows my small commits. And so having small commits make it easier for people to understand what you did retrospectively. And also it helps you stay focused and prevents, trying too many things at once. You do one thing, you commit, and eventually you can go back and try something else later. That's it. Let's move on. So I'm trying to speed up a little bit so we don't finish too late. The Mikado method. So someone mentioned it. I'm gonna dive into this because it is important. If you feel the brain dump is a bit too common sense and not structured enough, you can try the Mikado method. It is a process, like a recipe you can apply. So if you are looking for a recipe you can try, the Mikado method is really helpful. Here is the recipe. First, so you want to do something. Clarify that, write it down on a piece of paper. I usually always start with a piece of paper because I'm just thinking, and then eventually I go online if I need to, but piece of paper and a pen, that works fine. You don't need technology to do that. So write it down, what you want to do. Then you start a 5-minute timer. In this case, I would prefer a timer that will stop you. So, you know, a timer you need to stop, it will ring, and it will really distract you. It will stop you after 5 minutes. And you try to do that. So you try to do that upgrade of the ORM within 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, so that's the next slide, you won't be able to achieve this, of course, because if you could, when that would mean the task you were about to do would take less than 5 minutes, so you will probably not even write it down. You would just do it. So this is common. This is the goal. When this happens, so the timer is ringing, and that's fine. 3 things you need to do, and they are very important. First, if you cannot do that within 5 minutes, why? Something is blocking you, obviously. Maybe because you have other things you need to do first. Maybe because you have 15 places to update, and that takes more than 5 minutes to do. So the idea is that you split down your objective into smaller ones based on what you have experienced during these 5 minutes. You have learned a few things, so stop and write that down. Then if you ever started to do some coding, revert. And this is super important. That's also why I recommend 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but not more, because reverting 5 minutes of code, it's fine. I mean, worst case scenario, you will take 2-3 minutes to redo that change, and that you will be good to go. If you start doing bigger times like 10-15 minutes, you may not want to revert your code, and that is the moment where you get off track of the technique. The technique works because you revert and you get back to a state that was working, so fresh, clean state. And here is the goal. You pick one of the subtasks you wrote, and you try again 5 minutes doing this instead. So you reduce the scope of the things you have to do within 5 minutes. So you iterate, you do that again and again and again and again. And eventually, at some point, you will be able to achieve your one goal, one sub-goal, within 30 seconds or within 2 minutes, but within 5 minutes for sure. Something will be so small to do that you can do that in 2 minutes. When you do that, it's a very great moment. So there are 3 things you need to do then. If you can, yeah. First, celebrate. Like internally, you achieved something, so you did progress. That's a little step, maybe, but that's still progress towards the thing you want to do. I like to cross off the thing you just achieved. You know, that feels like crossing off a to-do. It feels good in your body. You get into the movement. It's also a good moment to commit. So actually that combines the brain dump and the overcommitting, because what you are gonna commit is like 30 seconds or 2 minutes or 5 minutes of work max. So it's very small, and that will help you also do smaller commits. Then you pick another sub goal and you continue. You start over and you do that. Next slide. Yeah, so you cannot see the GIF, but this is a speedrun GIF. From the outside, it will look like you're speed running through the code base. And because your commits at the end will be the exact order, like the resolution in the good order without breaking the code. And that's not because you knew all of this before. That's because you discovered it, and every time you died, every time you failed to do something in 5 minutes, you get 5 minutes back in time and you try again, but with a different approach. And that's how you finally can get through the whole objective faster. So yeah, next slide, please. I'm gonna go quickly through this. I want to show you how it looks like to give you a feeling. So first, say you need to do this. I put a few words on that. There is a ticket, an issue that gives more context. I don't care. I don't want to capture all the context. I want something to remember what I'm doing. So I write that down. I try to do that 5 minutes. What happens next is I cannot do that in 5 minutes, but I discovered that there are 4 other stuff I would need to simplify first if I want to achieve what I want. So I pick another one and I do that again. And I cannot do that within 5 minutes. But I discovered 2 other things. Like there is a flag parameter I want to get rid of. There is also a file that is still in JavaScript, and that makes the work slower. It would be nice if it was TypeScript. Whatever. I do that again and again. And at this point, so when you're not using the technique, you may feel either you're in a broken state and you don't really know when you will be done, or you achieve nothing. You are staring at the code. It has been 30 minutes. You don't really know where you are. You're building this mental model of the code, but from the outside, it looks like you're doing nothing. And if you get distracted or you get into a meeting, you need to rebuild that context later again in your head. This is nice because you're making that explicit. So it helps you not hold everything in your brain first. And also you got a plan. So, you know, this first stack you had to estimate and you thought, oh, that's going to take 1 day. No, you have a big visible argument of, well, it's going to take more than 1 day because look at everything that we need to do to actually achieve this. And this is not something we could have known before. You need to start doing it to realize that you have all of this to do. The mechanical method is just you taking a little bit more time to put that down somewhere so it's visible. Next. And then eventually, yeah, you start doing stuff because they are so small you can achieve them. And eventually you get into a phase where you start crunching through the smaller task. So you can move on to the next slides. Yeah, so every time you do one thing, you make a bigger task easier to do. You're making the change easy, and then you do the easy change. And this is totally supporting that idea. And yeah, continue. Eventually, again, yeah, until the next one. Eventually, you get here or somewhere next year. Oh, before, please, the one before. Just want to conclude on this one. Yeah. So eventually, you get here, which is a very good situation because it means that you're very close to completing your main task. So the next slide. It shows you that there is a book about that technique. I share with you the spirit. There is a book. I would recommend you not to buy it now because, well, if you're like me, you will buy the book and it will go in your to-read list, and you have other books to do before, and so you will never try the technique before you read the book, and that's the mistake. You don't need to read the full book and to understand all of the specificities of the technique to start trying this. I give you a simple recipe here. Try this. You will have edge cases, you will have questions, and that's when you will have the questions that you will have a good motivation to then buy the book and find the answers to your questions. Because it will be much more efficient to find the answers to your questions in the book rather than waiting for you have read all the book before you try doing something. 2 things. I put you a link here if you want a tool to collaborate or to put that online. I like MindMap. I don't know any tool that does it very well, but I like MindMap because there's less friction to create the graph. I don't want friction. I want like a piece of pen and paper. I don't want friction to put from what's in my head into the physical support. And also, when you have this graph, you can share with others, and you can stop at any time. So you will probably ship multiple intermediate pull requests saying, okay, this pull request is not solving the issue, but it's tackling all of these smaller to-dos that will make the issue easier to tackle. So that was it for the Mikado method. Hotspot analysis. Yeah, let's dive into this one. So you already have Adam Thornhill work, and basically it's from his work. Your code as a crime scene, code scene, all of that. It's amazing. It's incredible in terms of working with legacy code. This is more about how do you strategically address technical debt. So you already are familiar with this. I'm gonna go fast through this. When everything is urgent, nothing is. Eisenhower Matrix, if you don't know that, it's a simple technique to prioritize the things you have to do. So things that are urgent and important, so you need to do them soon. And if you don't do them, the consequence will be terrible. Do it now. And then you realize some of the things you have to do are not, the deadline is not soon, so it's not urgent. Or if you don't do them, really what will happen? Maybe it's not that important. And so you categorize between do it now, later, delegate eventually, or just don't do it, drop it, like close the issue, and it will come back naturally if it becomes important or urgent later. Okay, that's for prioritizing stuff. What about the code? What about the technical debt? People usually use static analysis tooling to analyze how bad the code is. And on the paid legacy code base, you will get scores like that, like D, 8 years to clean up all of the tech debt. What do? I mean, when you have 1 million lines of code to manage, yeah, you have a lot of technical debt and a lot of problems slowing you down. That is the importance. That is how bad it is. But how do you prioritize? You need the urgency, and the urgency, if you're familiar with Adam Thornhill work, you already know where to find it. It will be in your version control metadata. So next slide. Yep. So the key here is if you don't touch the code, it doesn't matter that it is terrible. It doesn't look good, but you don't care until you have to touch this. So you can look at what are the parts of the code base you touch in the past year. And here is the magic. If you are 4 people working on the code, and the code is 1 million lines, it's fine because these 4 people didn't touch the 1 million lines of code in the past year. They probably touch a few percentage of that code base. And so this is the part where you need to focus your efforts. The rest doesn't matter. Here is the Git comment to on any Git project, get the 50 files you touch the most. Yeah, next slide. And you can combine that with your static analysis tool. So if you're using CodeScene, it does it for you already. CodeClimate also has something, which is something I used here, but you can do that manually as long as you have a static analysis tool and Git or other version control stuff. You can build that kind of graph. So if you're in a tech lead position, CTO, whatever, and people are listening to you about how we should develop the product so we keep the velocity high, you can come up with a plan which is not, let's rewrite everything. You can come up with a smart plan, which is, hey, we have identified these few files or these 2-3 modules. If we start cleaning up these files, so it's not that big, we can do that maybe within a few weeks. That will have a good return on investment. And it will improve the velocity of everyone because this is where we spend most of our time. And you can do that even when you're a consultant and you don't know the code base. What you need is a static analysis tool and using Git metadata to understand where are the people working. And you come up with a plan. And it's a pretty simple and efficient way to come up with a good plan. All right, let's see the next 2 methods I'm sharing. So app role testing. This one is also an important technique. Unfortunately, it will be too long to detail this because I have a whole talk just on this. And you have other talks I can send you links to. what matters is this. What the system is doing is more important than what you think the system is doing. And that's the problem with rewrites. You want to rewrite because you're giving up on understanding the code and it's too complicated. But the problem is if you're rewriting a new application and everyone is aware that this won't be the same and it won't do the same thing and it will be different, that's fine. But if you say rewrite in the sense like, okay, this will do the same thing, we'll just do it with a new technical stack, more modern and with a less technical depth, that's a mistake. It doesn't work, never works, because you don't understand what the system is doing. So you will introduce a lot of regressions and it will be a nightmare and you will have to take all the shortcuts without the context of the decisions that were taken before because people didn't wrote ADRs. So you can move to the next slide and the one after. Yeah, so reminder of you have short deadlines. Approval tests are the fastest way to write the missing test. So the problem with legacy code is usually you don't have tests and you have short deadlines. So you want to write the test fast because you need to refactor the code so you can change make it easy to add new behavior. But the code you have to refactor is not tested, so you don't know if you will be breaking something. So you need to first capture what the system is doing so you can refactor it, so you can change it easily. Approval test is the first step. Approval test is what you will hear in the wild, but other people call that characterization test, like Michael Feathers. Golden Master, it's the very old name of this kind of philosophy. And snapshot test, because the people at Facebook with Jest, they decided to come up with another name, but the gist of it is, yeah, you're capturing existing code behavior. 3 steps, and you probably do that manually today without realizing. The first step is, sorry, can you go back to the first step? The first step is the code you need to run, you need to refactor, I mean, put that in the test. So try to make that work in the test, and that can already take some time. Try to execute that code. And what you do is you take the output of that code, the behavior of that code, and you put that into a file. Like you put a string version of the behavior into a file. That means if the code is returning something, this is obvious. You take the output and you put that in a file. If it does side effects, like calling a database or a third-party server, you need to find a way to listen to these side effects, and maybe you will capture the parameters that are used to call the third-party server, for example, whatever. And these parameters, these are the interesting bits you put into a file. So different ways of doing this. I have much more content about that. But for example, what you can do is inject an optional parameter, which will be like a logger, and you call that in your test. You use that function to capture what happens. So you modify the code, but in production, it doesn't do anything. But in your test, you're logging interesting bits as you execute the code without modifying its behavior. And at the end, you have something, you have a string you can put in a file, your snapshot. Okay, next step. So once you have this first test running, this is when you use test coverage. Test coverage tells you what you're not testing. It doesn't tell you the quality of what you're testing, but it tells you what you're not testing. If what you need to touch is part of what is not tested, you need to find new combinations of the parameters that you pass to your function, or context, or global variables, whatever. You need to find ways to get that green. And then you just take that behavior again and you put it in another snapshot. That's the part that goes fast, is because you can actually do that without really understanding what is going on. What you care about is, it's like a game, you want to get here. So maybe you will need to, you may need to understand a little bit what are the conditions blocking you from getting here. But really, if it seems to have a quality, like a check on the quality with a number, if it doesn't work, I don't care. I will loop and try all the number between 0 and 100, and that will generate 100 snapshots. I don't care. I just want that part to be covered fast. So that's the second step. And finally, That's because test coverage doesn't tell you if you're actually testing this. So at the end, what I like to do is I go on the part that I covered and I want to change. And before doing that, I just do a silly mistake, like I comment out some code or I introduce an obvious mistake. I run the test and I want to see one test failing. If no test is failing, I need to add more. And if something is failing, I am super confident that now I have the feedback I was looking for, and now I can start refactoring this code. So this is an example of what the code could look like at the end if you use a framework. This will do a cross combination of all of these inputs. So this will generate 24 tests. It is not performant. It doesn't help neither. So when you look at this test, you don't really understand what the system is doing. This is just here. So next slide. So you can be safe doing changes. Once you get that, you get something telling you if you broke something or not. And writing that, in my experience, is much, much more faster. So yeah, I do have more details, but you have the slide so you can dig into this if you are interested. And finally, I don't know what time is it, but it's getting, yeah, okay, I'm gonna speed up. Coding katas. So yeah, you can move to the next slide. This was an illustration, but I will go straight to the point. Coding katas, you may already know that. Coding exercises to practice your skills. Many katas are about design patterns or architecture or how do you build codes from scratch. This is good. You have some katas that are specifically designed for working with existing code. So if you're interested in improving your techniques to work with the code that you're not familiar with and it's difficult to work with, here are five exercises you can try. And they're sorted from the simplest to the hardest, in my opinion, in my experience. If you've never done that before, I recommend you try the Gilded Rose kata. You will find plenty of resources on the topic. So if you're looking for techniques and solutions and how people are solving this, Gilded Rose is a great one. And then you have the game trivia, which is much more involving, which looks much more like a real code with math random, with side effects, etc. And you need to get that into test and refactor the code, etc. The goal of this exercise is it's not to complete them. You don't care. Like the exercise is always the same. The goal is to try things and be more comfortable applying some techniques on the small exercise. So then you can apply them in the much more complex world of your actual legacy code base, which is probably much more convoluted than this. But if you master the technique and you understand the philosophy, it is easier to try that at work. And this is my next point, and actually final point is when to practice. So if you're lucky, you may have, like you're taking here some extra time on your personal time, and that's great. Not everyone can afford that, doing that on the evening, on the weekend, or maybe you don't want to, and it's totally fine. Your company has a training budget. You may use this budget already to go to conferences or to learn new tools, framework, libraries, or to train yourself on soft skills and management, which is also important, working with people. But the idea is that you could maybe use that budget, part of that budget, to spend time working on these coding exercises. Some people maybe here even are coaches, then they can be hired to train your team to apply these techniques on exercises. So take time on your work time, so paid by your company, as part of training to train yourself, not in new languages and framework, which are interesting, but take some time to train yourself on how to manage existing code, because that will always be true regardless of the language. And at some point in your career, you will have to work with existing code. Code retreat, yeah, I put a link to the code retreats. So there is an event, there is even a global day. It's on Friday or Saturday. You can attend both or one of them. It's a global event worldwide. You can join many people, and it's a good place to practice skills with other people. So I recommend that. So that's it, 7 techniques. Yeah, if you scroll down, I'm gonna share also with you. So yeah, that's an old slide. I was not done writing this before, but first aid kit, they mentioned it. So if you have the question about the first aid kit, what is it? There is a page that you can go and look. It's an ebook, 200 pages. I shared 14 techniques. 3 of them are the ones I presented here, like approval testing. Can you go back to the list, please? That was above. No, above. Yeah, above. Oh, yes. Oh. Okay, can you scroll up?
Yeah.
So hotspot analysis. Yeah, the
this,
list of techniques.
Yeah, this
no,
one.
The seven techniques. Yes, this one. I wanted to, because I got the question, so I want to answer it right away. Are these the same techniques? Not exactly. For example, ADRs, I don't mention it in the book because in the book I focus on the short-term things you can do when you're dealing with legacy code. You have short time, no test. What do you do? This is the book. So I don't mention ADR, neither BrainDup, because they are covered by the Mikado method. I detail the hotspot analysis. I detail. If you're familiar with head and tornado, you will be familiar with this. And approval testing, I finally get much more into details of what it looks like. So yeah, if you do have questions, don't hesitate. I do have a discount code because, well, I was doing that, so I figured I would also give you a discount. I'm gonna share that in the chat, and oops, wait. Don't open this.
So we will share it. We will share it directly on the meetup at the end as well. So
yeah, perfect. So I'm sharing that with you. So I
cool.
usually do that when I do a presentation. I do a 30% off the book. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any question in the chat?
Yep, we had one from Edward, but he left, unfortunately. But we still have his question. So the question was, would you recommend performing this in TCR? So it was when you were talking about Mikado.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, I won't recommend for one reason. If you're asking, I guess you're not familiar with TCR and maybe not with Mikado because you are asking. So that's too many things to try at once. I would recommend you try one technique at a time to get a taste of it and become comfortable. Like if you try too many constraints and new techniques at once, you will have a hard time and you won't do any progress. So try one of them to start with, like TCR or Mikado. And when you feel you understand how it works, maybe try add new stuff to customize your workflow. It is compatible, yeah, definitely. TCR, it's a variant of TDD, as you mentioned. Mikado can be applied to anything. Mikado is really about, you have one thing to do, you don't really know what are the set tasks, and you want to avoid also, especially in code, you want to avoid being in a state where nothing is working anymore because you started doing the change, but it's not done yet. So it helps you make the change easy first and then do the easy change. TCR is much more about limbo, like it's about how small the step you can take. So it forces you to that every change you do, every time you touch the code, it is very small, like you do a minimal change. So the spirit is the same. Doing small changes over time is better than trying to do something big, especially when you work with existing code and you don't master this. Take small steps. But yeah, they're compatible, but you can try them independently, and I would recommend that. All right.
Thank you.
Any open question before we finalize? Yeah, on table.
So anyway, we have still time for question. let's move on to the round table. So the first question is, who has already practiced one of those practices that we've seen? Maybe, Johan, if you can show also the list of practice from the last slide that we've seen. And yeah, voila, this one. So this list from the people here. What have you already tried, or something similar? Maybe you don't have the same wording. And what was your experience? So what was good? What was wrong? What did you change in the time? I had a third question, which was also.
I used, in my experience, approval testing, and or an equivalent of approval testing, not with the existing framework, very close to that. And I tried a couple of times Mikado method after having a workshop with E1, which is yeah, I tried these two things. And for me, approval testing worked the best. It's very practical, very pragmatic.
Let's say if you have not tested those methods, so thank you, Rodislav. For the other one, if you have not tested, which one would you like to maybe have a deep dive in a future session?
I can start the Mentimeter, so we can have it directly from them.
Oh yes, okay, yes, you have.
Yeah, we can do it like this. Yeah, let me just share the link up. So I post you a link in the chat to answer to two really quick questions, and then we can close if you have no further question. So you should be able to, if you click on the chat, if you open the link in the chat, you should be able to vote for the first question. It was the question Adrien said just before it. So you should have it on your screen, and you should be able to vote.
Oh, you need to enable the votes.
Yeah, I don't know why. Okay, keyboard shortcut C. Yep. Sorry. So the one you will really want to deep dive in. So 3 answers. ADRs.
Architecture decision records, ADR.
Okay, 6 answers, no one else? Okay. Okay, so we can go to last one, ADRs as well. Is it something that you, is it the kind of stuff that comes out from your session as well, Nicolas?
Yeah, well, typically. So just to give you a transparent backstage view, I did that a couple of times, and I reorganized also the techniques, because coding katas is more of, hey, think about it, about how you will make that true, because I really want people to try something for real. Like, we're overwhelmed with advice, but try something for real. So that's the coding kata motivation. The brain dump on overcommitting, they are interesting, but there are like smaller steps of the bigger, which is the Mikado method, which is really the interesting technique in my opinion. ADRs is obviously one of the simplest and best way to have benefits long term. Hotspot analysis is an interesting one, and I'm surprised many people don't know it, but it deserves to be known. And approval testing, as you said before, like it's very efficient. So.
Okay, cool. And next, let's say the last question we ask you is, how would you describe this session? So 3 words about this session. It's really feedbacks for Nicolas and for us. So please be transparent. And normally, if it's working, we should have a word cloud. If it works.
Wow, it's working.
Yeah, it's working.
I'm impressed by the Menti tool. Yeah, no worries. I wonder about the time. Like, was it a good time? Too early? Too late? It's always difficult.
I don't know. What is your answer, guys?
I think it's fun. For me, for example, at this time I have to pick up kids from school. So in general, it's okay. Sorry, I'm on the street. That's why there is a lot of noise.
Yeah, usually we organize it during lunchtime. We have the same number of people, I think, during lunchtime as well. So yeah.
Oh, I don't worry about the number of people, because like as long as we are more than just me, it's fine. I'm happy to share. It's actually lunchtime for me, so I'm less disturbed. But yeah, it's tricky in terms of time zones.
Yeah, sure. No, that's good. Thank you very much for being there today. It was really great, and I think we learned a lot. And I wanted to give you a feedback regarding Mikado. I think it was the first time I've seen it with a timer with an exercise so short time. Yeah, and I think it's really interesting the way you present it.
It can be challenging, but I think usually it's what, 15 minutes.
Yeah, something like this. Yeah.
15 minutes, I think. But I found most of the friction of reverting came from the fact that 15 minutes starts to be a lot of work to throw away. So I try a much more aggressive. I give 5 minutes so people eventually try 10. But if you can do 5 minutes, it will force you to really take tiny steps. And when you're beginning, I think it's helpful.
Yeah, I think so as well. Really good idea. Okay, Adrien?
It's time for closing, I think. Thank you. Thanks for also the participation, feedbacks, and of course, Nicolas, for accepting the invitation. It will be a pleasure to meet you again in the future, maybe in a physical way.
I would love that.
I will need to go to Montreal.
No, you
said, I will.
I have no plan to go to Montreal sooner, but once you go to France, and maybe we can meet in a conference or somewhere, would be fun.
Yeah. Just one thing, two things to be honest. So don't miss it. There is a craft conference. I don't know if you can assist it with the time zone. I think it's a nightmare for you, Nicolas. But tomorrow there is the craft conference that is starting. So it's really a great event regarding craftsmanship. So it's a 3-day event. I think it will be fully online. So if you want to have your spot, I think it's something like 300 euros or something like this. So it's not that expensive, and there are really great speakers. And regarding our meetup, our next event will be on the 15th of June, so in 2 weeks, and it will be on Ofte for Spring Apps with Laurențiu Șpilca. I don't know how to spell it, how to pronounce it really well. It's a Romanian guy, really well known in the Java community, so don't miss it as well. And I think we have other events, but not yet announced. So we will have another guy, Patrick Smakia, at the beginning of July. He's the creator of a tool called Ndepend. That is a well-known tool for .NET developers. Really great tool.
A good one. It's
yeah,
a very good one. Yeah.
Really impressive one. Yeah, and with the latest version of .NET, it's even impressive, even more impressive. So yeah, and the guy is really cool. Really cool accent, French accent like us in English. Like me. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you again.
Thank you. It was nice, and have a nice rest of your day.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
C'est bon.